It's often said that Super Bowl winners got hot at the right time. Well, guess who's hot on New Year's? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. Welcome into a new year, and I hope my hashtag everydayers plan to stick with me every day of the new year as well. I appreciate you all so very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the year big with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today on the show, there are a few points I want to make about the film that I watched now of the Packers game. Checking in on a couple of things that I talked about yesterday that I kind of put a pin in. One is the O-line, and the other is the kind of defensive collapse at the end. What was it up to? And the kind of 2-minute problems that they have. And I think there's a very specific incongruity, and I actually think it's really easy to fix. The Vikings just have to be willing to. And I think ultimately it's a decision that they absolutely can make without sacrificing any of their philosophies. So we'll get to all of that. But the broader point I want to make here is that everything is coming together at the right time. And the overarching idea that I got just watching the tape was just every play, someone was just winning the matchup straight up. And what I kind of expected to see, especially considering all of the Jordan Love, rolls out, throws away, or throws a bad one kind of plays that we had, was that there would be some kind of schematic, ooh, they got him there, kind of some tricky tricks that worked. And on both sides of the ball, that wasn't really what I saw. It was just, oh, well, Dalton Risner just beat Kenny Clark there. Okay, that works. And on the other side, it was like, oh, Grenard just won against Zach Tom and got the pressure there. Okay, great. Perfect. That works. Van Ginkel just beat, or it was Van Ginkel that beat Zach Tom and got half a sack, I would say, with Blake Cashman on a stunt. Guys just won. Oh, Shaq Griffin just stayed in good coverage there. Byron Murphy in particular. Byron Murphy had a lights out insane game. He got a little bit of separation on him by Bo Melton once. I don't really know what to tell you about that. But, and I think, no, it was Gilmore. Wicks got Gilmore once, but the Vikings ran a lot of man coverage. This is something, somebody asked about this yesterday because LaFleur said it in his post-game presser. He's like, oh yeah, they ran more man coverage than we thought. And that's been sort of a rising thing for the Vikings in the last few years as they gain more and more confidence in their corners. And the corners really paid it off in this one. I think the secondary had an absolutely insane, phenomenal game, at least up until the kind of meltdown at the end. But a lot of that meltdown was not on Byron Murphy, I don't think, and was a little bit more, then it got a little bit more I think the Vikings were making coaching mistakes, but the players themselves really carried this one. And both teams walked in, and I think this is really cool with a division rivalry with two teams with the confidence the Vikings and the Packers have, right? And you can hear it in their fan bases, right? The way that they talk, both of those fan bases walked into that game beating their chests and saying, "Now we're going to take you out." And both of those teams walked in like that too, with game plans that really said, "We think our guys can beat your guys." And it's really fun when a game, both teams come into a game like that. And you don't see that a lot, as much as everybody will say that they have the utmost confidence and stuff. Look, you watch the Broncos play and not go for two when they score a game-tying touchdown. That's a little bit, we don't know if you got this, quarterback. There's a confidence thing there, right? But the Vikings played man coverage all day. The Packers rushed 4 pretty much all day. That's what they do, right? They just thought their guys were going to be able to, Rashawn Gary, we trust you. Kenny Clark, we trust you. We're going to just throw you guys in and you guys got this. The Vikings didn't use a lot of exotic blitzes. They didn't use their cover zero, right? They just had Grenard and Van Ginkel pass rush. Then they said, you guys can just beat the tackles. You can just do that. Good luck. They did some of the stunts, right? The Vikings don't really ever just do vanilla 4-man rushes, or if they do, they never do it a lot in a game. Like there will always be some kind of game, some kind of something going on, or some kind of pass rush plan. Nobody's ever just pinning their ears back and kind of haphazardly playing it freestyle, but within that structure, it was straight up. And the Vikings just sort of won matchups all over the place, in particular on the offensive line, which I guess that's where we can hone in first, which the O-line had a phenomenal game, just phenomenal game. And in particular, Cam Robinson had a great game. He still is good like 2 or 3 times a game, and this is just going to be the way it is. This will happen in the playoffs too. 2 or 3 times a game, he's going to get beaten the inside of the B-gap. And Darnold's going to have to flush out, or it'll turn into a sack, or maybe it'll, Darnold will make a miss and it won't matter or whatever. But like you're going to have 2 or 3 of those plays a game. You just will. It's just what he does. The way he sets up is exploitable. Everybody's seen it and everybody's going to be able to take advantage of it a couple times. And I'm sure that was happening on the Jags too, because it did happen on the Jaguars tape that I watched when the Vikings traded for him. So whatever, that is what it is. But kind of outside of those like 2 or 3, he was killing it. He was playing physical. He was getting up to reaches. I think a real standout on the line is Dalton Risner in this one. Risner had the best game of his season, at least in my opinion, in both run and pass. In pass blocking, there were some absolutely beautiful, chef-tastic stunt pickups between him and Bradbury, or him and O'Neal, or even him and like the running backs. The running backs even all had moments. Like Aaron Jones, I think it's the first or second play of the game. It was the second play. It was the one that the Johnny Munt like flip out just into the flat. I think it was like a 2nd and 6. Aaron Jones has a nasty stunt pickup. CJ Ham has one. Edrin Cooper coming right in. Or no, it was Aaron Jones again. Edrin Cooper coming right in. You just got to stick your face right in the fan and just eat it, right? And Aaron Jones ends up on his ass, but the ball gets off, right? And that's sometimes just what you got to do as a running back. It does not look fun. It does not look pretty, but you do slow the guy down enough and it counts as a block. But the Packers pass rush, kind of confirming my suspicions, it's not good. I don't think I'm going to ruffle anybody's feathers by saying that pass rush is not good. When Jeff Hafley is doing blitzes and stuff, I think they can find a little bit more success, but when they're just rushing for and trying to twist, that just ain't it. Rashawn Gary takes too many L's. Kenny Clark, he ain't the guy he used to be. And they don't really have weapon. Like Lucas Van Ness is not going to show up and save their season, So it came down, but I think the Packers were overconfident in that group, and I think they have been all year. I think that's part of their problem, is that they aren't manufacturing better opportunities for guys, and these guys can't cash those checks anymore. So it leads to a lot of very pure one-on-one situations with Dalton Risner and O'Neal and even Bradbury in the middle. There are moments where Kenny Clark is one-on-one against Garrett Bradbury. For 6 years, we have hated this, but Bradbury's winning these now. So that helps keep Sam Darnold clean. I'm working on a Patreon video about the whole thing. Speaking of Sam Darnold, as I am recording this, it just published an article at Wide Left about Sam Darnold and his relation to risk. And if you are a non-Vikings fan listening to this for whatever reason, and you are maybe a fan of a team that is thinking about signing Sam Darnold in the offseason, if you're trying to get a sense for that, I strongly encourage that article, because that's kind of what it was written for. It was written for, so your team is looking at Sam Darnold. Here's what you have to know, that kind of thing. That kept him clean for really long times, really long pockets, and then he could sit back there and deal and do what he does. And it's no surprise that that's the kind of game that Sam Darnold sets a career day in. 377, 3 touchdowns. One of them was a screen, but like from a box score perspective, we're looking at that. That's now the best stat line of Darnold's career. And I do think like he played very well, and it goes up to that next level because he also got help, right? He wasn't overcoming anything. He was just able to sit back there and, no excuses. What can you do? And it turns out that's what he can do. Excellent. And obviously, great stuff downfield. Jordan Addison continues to really impress me with how smart he is. You saw there was an Aaron Jones run, a little zone to the left that almost scored at the end. And then it was like 2 plays later, Cam Akers scores on the screen. Do you remember the one I'm talking about? And they showed Jordan Addison with a really good crack block from the outside, right? A little guy like that, willing to block, you love to see it. But what you can't quite see on that angle is that he takes a couple of steps forward like he's about to release, which gets the corner to back off. And then he goes and crack blocks. The corner's playing, he's playing coverage first, right? Corners have to play coverage first. So you give him just a little something to look at. He backs up a little bit, and then suddenly he's late to where he's supposed to be in the fit. He's too wide, and Aaron Jones can do the rest. It was a great one run by Aaron Jones. I thought that corner, I think it was Bullard, did a really good job of kind of squeezing down that space, trying to minimize the damage there and still force that lane to be like you needed precision, but Aaron Jones had the precision and can punish it anyways. And that's what you get with two good teams, right? All right, you did a good thing. That guy did a good job to mitigate it, but still did a little. And then the third guy had to do a good job to make sure they affect it. Like everybody did a good job considering their circumstances, but it turns out that the Vikings had just a little bit more success, and so they get a big run on there. That's all very exciting. I'm loving Jordan Addison this year. It's so much fun to watch him play. He has really come into his own as not just wide receiver too, but as a real lever to this offense, like a real load-bearing pillar on this offense. Those three pass catchers, Darnold, the O-line humming, everything's humming. And by the way, all kinds of really cool stuff happened on defense as well. That's what I'm going to get to next. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, you can start the new year off strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has all kinds of ways for you to pick up a W if you want to go gamble on that Vikings-Lions behemoth showdown coming up right now at FanDuel. The Lions are favored by 2.5. This line's been moving. People are hitting the Lions really hard, so maybe you could wait and get even more points on the Vikings if you're going to bet on the Vikings, but something to monitor there. The Vikings right now, plus 800 in Super Bowl odds, so that's 9-1. You 9 times your money if you go win that one, or you can bet on something with a bunch shorter odds and just try to get your $250 in bonus bets if that $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Moving right along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Once again, thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of 2025. Shout out if this is the first podcast you listen to in the new year. Very much appreciate you all. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. And your first listen of the year, maybe? Shout out if I was your first listen in 2025. I want to hear about it. Thank you all so much for coming and hanging out. So let's move on. There are a couple of things defensively I want to talk about that one is good and one is bad, right? We'll end the show with the kind of stuff that happened at the end and what I think the Vikings can do about it, because I do think this is a solvable problem. They just have to be willing to. But I don't want that to be like the main takeaway from this game, because the Vikings defense played fantastically. I got to talk more about the Byron Murphy game because, oh my God. So the Vikings played a bunch of two-man in this one. Again, very confident, very like, we're just going to go in, and as hyped up as your group of Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed and all these guys are, no Christian Watson in this one, but it's still like Christian Watson, let's be honest, like he has not been the main focal point of that Packers offense. He shows up sometimes, but I feel like he's a little bit more of a, game-to-game proposition. But they've got a lot of guys that they're excited about there. And Dontavion Wicks, of course. And we just kind of walked in and said, yeah, we got Shaq Griffin and Stephon Gilmore, and we're not afraid of it. And Byron Murphy. And it worked. So when you play two-man, which is where they really lived a lot in this game, and I've been calling for two-man for 2 years. I love the way that this defense, the way that Brian Flores' whole setup interacts with the principles of two-man, and I wanted them to run it more, and they ran it a bunch, and it worked, and I feel very vindicated. But so here's what I like about it, right? When you play two-man, maybe it's because I watched this happen to Justin Jefferson a whole bunch on the other side of the ball. When you play, because we see a bunch of two-man there, when you play two-man, you got two guys over the top, so everything is covered deep, right? Everything is capped deep. Every route that goes deep can be deep. So when you play man coverage, you are going to get into trail position. You're supposed to get into trail position. That means you are a step behind, because if he's going vertical, you've got somebody covering up front. You got to cover the curls, the comebacks, the stuff that can kind of break off underneath. And then you got your eyes on him. So you can watch his hips, and when he breaks, you break, and you can hopefully keep up with wherever the route breaks. That's how you play 2-man. The Vikings did a phenomenal job of that. But what that means is that the first little bit of the route kind of doesn't matter. They can do all the razzle dazzle, they can release, they can do everything that they want to try to generate a step of separation. You're going to give that up anyways and get into trail position. So they can waste all the time that they want. And that's why the teams love to do it against the Vikings, because Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison are both guys. And go back to Thielen when he was here. And I think Jefferson learned some of this from Thielen back in 2020, 2021. That all those guys love to do a bunch of razzle dazzle on the top of the route, and it works great, and it gets them open, and it kills guys. Addison loves to widen out his right, do something really savvy that gets him open. But if you're going to be in trail position anyways, you can let him waste all his time doing that and sort of neutralize his talent. You can make it not matter that he's good, and that's how you have to contend with good players. You can't make them bad. You have to make it irrelevant that they're good. So I love this for the Vikings, who often you see a matchup like Jaden Reed versus Stephon Gilmore, and you go, I don't know if I love that. Old corner versus really fast guy. Right? But in 2-man, okay, you can run by me a little bit. I've got help over the top. And it worked. And they all did great trail position. And then what you get with an old guy like Gilmore is the veteran presence to know exactly how to space yourself in trail position, how to time yourself when you're trying to make a play on the ball. And in particular, this whole deal is what Byron Murphy was so good at. There are 3, I think, maybe 4 plays where he's in some kind of trail position or some sort of he's not in the receiver's pocket. He's off a little bit. There is a little bit of separation, and Jordan Love tries it, and Byron Murphy comes in and makes the play. I think he got called for 1 pass interference, and nobody agreed with it. Or was that Gilmore? It was one of them. It was one of our corners. I don't remember who it was on, but I did not agree with that call anyways. I think they did a fantastic job of knowing exactly where the line was in terms of how much contact was going to be allowed by these refs and getting away with only the one foul. Elsewhere on the defense, the linebackers, oh baby. Blake Cashman and Ivan Pace. Cashman more than Pace. Pace had one particular moment, we'll get to it, in one of the drop 8 coverages late in the game where he gave up a big one, but early in the game, the way these guys are stacking up the run, oh my God, having these guys back is so nice. It is so much faster, and it's so much more dynamic laterally, because both these guys know where they're supposed to be, and they know exactly how far away from their spot they can go before they're out of position. It's like a veteran baseball player knowing exactly how much he can lead off before he's going to get thrown out. That sort of same idea is okay, I know where I'm supposed to be. I'm tethered to that, but how far can I cheat, And Cashman's good at that. Pace is getting better at that with his experience he's still only a second-year guy, remember. And the aggression is great. So there's a lot of run stops where those guys just fit it, just stack it up perfectly. I think Bullard had a really nice day. I think the entire outside linebacker room had a really nice day. Van Ginkel had his flashes. Jonathan Grenard was a problem all day long. Dallas Turner had nice stuff. Pat Jones went out. That was a bummer. The whole room was good outside of Pat Jones getting hurt. And but again, a lot of that is just winning matchups. It's just Byron Murphy being on Romeo Dobbs and getting him, getting his hand in on the ball. And especially on Jaden Reed. I think they handed Jaden Reed a frustrating day. And there was that slant on 4th down that he dropped, which was one of the times that separation was given up. And he was visibly frustrated by then. He reacted, not oh shoot, I dropped that one, but it was something was boiling over. So they frustrated him. And then they didn't. It started to go bad. But what I want to sort of get you thinking about, and then I want to pose the question and then I'll answer it in a bit. What do you think prevent defense is? Because I've seen that everywhere. People saying, oh, they went into prevent. What is prevent? What do you think prevent is? I don't think I think many people, I will say, I'll be vague about it. Many people are misidentifying what prevent defense is, and I want to clear that up. So that'll be next. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by PrizePicks. It is playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of this time. Playoff PrizePicks, I will be making a play every single game, whether the Vikings are in it or not. That's the way I'm going to do this on PrizePicks. All you got to do is pick more or less on player stats, like passing yards, touchdowns, whatever, and you can get a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. I had the weekend of weekends on PrizePicks. I actually didn't hit a whole bunch of them, but I clicked flex on all of them. So the ones I lost, I still would get like 75% of my money back. And the ones that I won, I was able to double or even triple my money, depending on how risky I was willing to be there. So just pick 2 to 6 of your favorite players, put them in the lineup, decide if you're going to do flex or power play, and you can work it from there. Here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today and use code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, let's face the music here. It's Locked On Vikings, and we are talking about what happens to the Vikings when they get a lead. So here is, I'll get the thesis out of the way right away. The Vikings are too liberal with how they identify what a pass-only down is. That's the problem. You can take that to the bank. Write that down. They are too liberal with what they identify as pass-only downs. They have been caught in pass-only personnel packages or pass-only coverages, been run on in some of these. I think that's really frustrating, including the first touchdown the Packers got, the one that brought it to 27-16, and then they went for 2. On that play, 2 plays before that, the Packers went out of bounds, and they got a first down at the sideline. I think he maybe was going backwards, so they maybe kept the clock running, but either way was a chance to substitute, and the Vikings did substitute, and all they did was put in Jihad Ward and stay in a very fast package. They're in, call it a NASCAR package if you must, but it's the one with all the edges, NASCAR, because there's more speed, right? So you don't have any Phillips or Bullard or Tillery out there. Tillery, maybe the one guy I would say did not have a very good game. But obviously that impact was washed well away by phenomenal games by Cashman and Murphy and so on. But when you're in that package, that means that you've got Jihad Ward at the point of attack and nobody around him. And you're probably spread, it's easy to spread that out. And then suddenly you've got a guy that does not have the beef to take on a double team and hold his spot. That's not what Jihad Ward is here to do. He's here, if he's on the interior, it's because he thinks he's going to pass rush and you want him against a guard. But in the run, that's not the skill set that you're going to ask from him. Or Dallas Turner, probably the worst guy in the whole room for that, right? He's small and fast, and that's not his point. He's like a cover linebacker sometimes. It is reminiscent of the week 2 Eagles game last year, where they got caught with Ivan Pace there because it was 2nd and 7 and they were in, a pass only look. I also think generally the Kevin O'Connell Vikings, and I think I would extend this to Mike Zimmer too. I think the Vikings have had a problem with this for a while. And I think it's just that both these coaches, I disagree with both of these coaches on how they look at the clock. You got 7 minutes left. That is forever. 3 scores in 7 minutes, the clock is not the main thing preventing you from getting 3 scores in 7 minutes. It's getting 3 scores in a row. That's the hard thing to do. But to do it in 7 minutes when you need to is not hard at all. And the only reason that doesn't often happen is because in the first quarter, you don't care about it taking 7 minutes, and maybe you even want it to take more than 7 minutes. But if teams want to go fast, they can go fast. Look, we saw 13 seconds Pat Mahomes get all the way down the field and score. They can score fast. So when your game plan is predicated on letting stuff get caught in front of you, tackle, make them come up to the line and reset, and hope that time ticks off, that can work, but you have to have a realistic understanding of exactly how fast those guys are going. And I feel like the Vikings too often underestimate how quickly their opponent can go. That's not the issue here. And this leads me to kind of describing these coverages. What is prevent, do you think? I have my idea of what I think prevent defense is. And I think of it in like the Madden sense, that it's an actual coverage, it's a 3-deep coverage with guys dropping to 30 yards and 5 underneath. It's a drop 8 coverage, 3 deep, 5 underneath, or maybe it's 4 and 4. The deep drops are 30 yards. The shallow drops are 15 yards. And, everyone will be, it's Hail Mary defense. That's what I think of as prevent. The Vikings weren't in prevent in the fourth quarter. If you've been mad and why do they go into prevent? The answer is they were not in prevent. That's not what prevent is. The Vikings were in drop 8 coverages, which is something they will do on 2nd and 10 sometimes. I mean, that's not like a thing they only deploy situationally. They like it situationally, but it's not exclusively situational for them. It's a coverage they use. It's just a particularly conservative one. And so I'm not even saying that if you're mad about the Vikings going into prevent, spiritually, you're not wrong. It's just I want to get the misnomer out of there. And the misnomer of calling it prevent is the only issue because, like, in spirit, the Vikings being too conservative defensively with a lead is true. But that manifests in ways that are a little bit more subtle, like their 6-man coverage, right? Like, they didn't stop blitzing. They did continue to blitz, and I do think those blitzes were more effective than their 3-man rushes. But there was a play in one of those drives. It was a fire zone play, so that's a 6-man coverage. I call it palms. Some people call it like their hot quarters. It was quarters, right? So you've got 4 deep zones, 2 underneath zones, and those 2 underneath zones are hook zones in the middle. So nobody's covering the flat. This is the kind of classic Flores 6-man coverage. And the way that he covers the flat is by instructing the outside corners that if they see a route to the flat and they see the ball go there, they can be really aggressive about how they trigger on that. Maybe you're a little susceptible to like a pump and go, but you're rushing 5, so you should be able to handle that with the pass rush. That's the thesis. Go read my big long thing on wide left for more. But in this situation, they were just in straight quarters. So you have 4 guys going deep. Shaq Griffin turns his hips, bails way out, going deep. And then they ran a 10-yard out under him, and they got 10 yards and got out of bounds. That's too conservative for 7 minutes left in the game. There's just 7 minutes left in the game when they're doing this kind of stuff. Like, you just gave up big yards and you freely allowed them to get to the sideline, which stops the clock. So it doesn't work. So I think the Vikings are too quick to go into that. I think they have to understand, the Packers are in a hurry, and hurry up does harm the Vikings defense. So when you're in your snap count and you're doing your thing, you're ready and you're waiting for a motion, or you're doing anything at anything that teams love to do at the line of scrimmage, the Vikings have a response for that. And part of the success of them is that it neutralizes a lot of that stuff that the offenses do. But in hurry up, you don't have that stuff anyways because it all takes time and you don't have time to spare. So that advantage is sort of rendered null and things are played a little bit more straight up, which kind of advantages the team that was going to have to figure out how to work without it anyways. So, which is the offense. So there's nothing you can do about that, right? Like you just have to play better. But it wasn't all this sort of over-conservative idea. There were also just mistakes. There's the Ivan Pace one I mentioned earlier. It was a drop 8 coverage. He was in a hook zone and he played it like he was in the flat. And he just widened way too much. Tucker Kraft was wide open. It was like a 40-yard pass right off the bat. 3-man rush, 40-yard pass right off the bat. That means somebody made a mistake. That somebody was Ivan Pace. He does have a propensity to do that particular mistake where he like over widens when he's got a hook zone. Reacting, like taking some cheese a little bit too much, maybe like thinking he's got an opportunity or something, and just being a little bit too aggressive in pursuing it. But that kind of stuff is also prevalent. But the main thing is, and this is the suggestion, right? I don't think the Vikings should go into their, I'm not going to call it prevent mode, but we'll call it clock mode, right? We'll call it hurry up defense. They shouldn't go into their hurry up defense necessarily just because the other team is in their hurry up offense. They should still match personnel to personnel, right? Okay, you've got your 3 receivers out there. We'll put our nickel personnel out there, not our NASCAR, not our crazy. We'll just put our regular nickel personnel out there because you still got 7 minutes and you're still going to run. I'm not wrong about that. Like, that's true, and it's happened to them. So it's okay that Harrison Phillips is out there and maybe he's going to have to run a few plays. You got to deal with that. And if he can't, like, conditioning wise can't do that, then you got a bigger problem. But okay, then make it Jonathan Bowman, like, whatever. Put the guy out there who can. Make it Jerry Tillery. Just let's not have Jihad Ward in the B gap on zone runs anymore. I don't want that. That's not, with 6 minutes left in the game. Like, that's not winning football. And it only happens when they're up 3 scores and they're past halfway in the fourth quarter. So if they're up 3 scores past halfway in the fourth quarter, that's just too early. So the change I am suggesting is very easy, is just take that limit from halfway into the fourth quarter to 5 minutes. Then I think you're golden. Then everything that they give up still then takes a little bit too long, and 5 minutes isn't enough time anymore. But 8, 7, 6 is enough time to get 3 scores when they're up there. So up 3 scores with 5 minutes to go, you're good to go. But like one more drive where you play it straight up, and I'm happy. That's not an impossible change to make. That doesn't ask anybody to do any, like, that doesn't ask anybody to change positions, right? It doesn't ask them to go make an offseason acquisition in the middle of the season. It doesn't ask them to do anything super crazy. Just play it a little bit more straight up, one more drive, and you would be totally golden, because when the Vikings played the Packers straight up, the Packers offense couldn't move at all. It was only when they started to go into their, like, hurry up mode and their NASCAR packages and their drop 8 coverages and their, more straight up quarters instead of going into palms. Those are way more exploitable. It's like suddenly playing Flores in the preseason. It's like suddenly all the interesting stuff that makes him good can't be used, and you're stripping yourself of it earlier than you have to, allowing the other team back in the game. That's what I think is happening. Okay, so here's where we are at now. That puts a bow on the Packers game. Happy day, but we're moving on. Tomorrow we got Matt Derry, Locked On Lions, the crossover of crossovers. I'm feeling like jitters about the crossover. This game is so big in my heart. Like, it's awesome. I can't wait. And I love that it's with Matt. Vikings Lions games used to be in the 9th slot on Fox, and now we're here. Love it. And then, of course, Friday we'll have the Zoever under and all that. I will see you all then. And as always, Skull.